There we go. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Spirit, God is one. Amen. Christ is risen. Christos anesti. Christos voskresi. Christos envir. Christos enviat. A Messiah come. God bless you all. Nice to see you, Anthony and Stella, Dino. God bless you. And Brother Daniel, I've put some eggs on there. Probably ate too many eggs than last week. Never mind. They were delicious. Good morning, Judy. 2 weeks since we last Jovan and Vicky. There we go. Good morning, Phoebe. It seems like absolutely ages since we did this last time. And it's only about 2 weeks. In fact, maybe even slightly less than 2 weeks. Thank you very much, Jovan. And welcome to everybody as well. We're going to carry on. So John 15, verses 18 through to 27. That's what we'll be looking at today. It's a bit odd to feel we're going back in time. So we've had the whole business of there's amazing readings all the way through Great and Holy Week that take you right up to the foot of the cross and right into the tomb itself, which is so very shocking. And I find them difficult to read myself. Good morning, Graham. Christ is risen. And Natalia. Christos is crazy. And one of the things that I always look out for and enjoy seeing is the way that even from bridegroom matins onwards, we have hints of the resurrection to come. So the whole of the Holy Week services, where the priest is dressed in black or dark purple or dark red, are peppered with references to the resurrection. There's no point at all where we forget that Christ is already risen. And then if there's anything like we had here, in Lincoln at the moment, we then have this extraordinary bursting out of the bounds when we come to, well, for us, the earthquake service and the throwing of those leaves and things all over people. It always slightly amuses me. It's the one time of the year when Eleni, who is the church warden, does not mind if I make the whole place pretty filthy. One person dropped one little tiny bit of wax on the ground, though, any other time of the year, and she'll come out and wring your neck for you. Oh, dear. Good morning, Ian. Christ is risen. Okay, so I hope you've all had a wonderful time, all Easter egged out. Let's have a look to see then what it is we're going to read. Quite a lot. Verse 18, chapter 15. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, the servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. But all these things they will do to you for my name's sake, because they do not know him who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would have no sin, but now they have no excuse for their sin. He who hates me hates my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which no one else did, they would have no sin, but now they have seen and also hated both me and my Father. For this happened that the word might be fulfilled, which is written in their law. They hated me without a cause. But when the Helper comes, whom I shall send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who proceeds from the Father, he will testify of me, and you also will bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning. Okay. Good morning, Margaret, and good morning, Melengeth. He's risen indeed. It's actually turning out to be not too bad a day here. It's been raining and all the rest of it, just in case you needed to know what the weather's like. That seems to be part and parcel of the tradition. Quite warm too. warm and damp. Right. All of this is in the context of the previous verse. The previous verse, if anybody, is this. These things I command you, that you love one another. And then the rest of it there is about the world hating them. They love each other, and the world will hate them. The love they have for each other is something of a compensation for the world's hatred of them. Okay? So you have that dichotomy there. The church must be an institution absolutely of love. Anything else but love is foreign to the church and must be excised from it. So gossip and hatred and blasphemy and all those other things, and pushing people down and criticizing and all the rest of it, and being angry with other people for no just reason. There are times when you should be angry for no just reason. All those things need to be pushed out of the church completely. It has no part in our lives. But on the other hand, everything to do with love, that is to be kept, to be nurtured, to be not paraded around, but exercised within the community and spilling from the community into all the world. Okay? There's another religion that talks about love, and they do so absolutely only within their own community. And if they do it elsewhere, it's in order to bring people into that community. But Christian love has to be completely selfless. It is a gift that we are given, and we allow it to flow from us recklessly, I shall say, into everybody else. So that's the first thing. It's in the context of love. The second thing is this. You have to keep in your mind that whole business of anno and kato. You will remember that anno means above and kato means from below. Jesus and his disciples are now anno. They are from above. And you need to look therefore at things like chapter 8 verses 23 and so on, where the Lord says, you are from below, I am from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world. Or when he talks to Nicodemus in chapter 3 of John, where he talks about being born from above, being born again, being born from above. The disciples are not of this world, okay? They are born from above. Have another look at it. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world. Now, therefore the world hates you. They are from above. Hopefully we are also from above. And the world is from below, and our business is to help it to be born from above. Look at that. We're after Pascha, but I've still got my Christmas mug. I had to go and rescue it. Somebody had put it away. Oh, horror of horrors. I wouldn't enjoy the tea at all. I'm not enjoying this one very much either because it's leftover soya milk that I found in the fridge. I thought I'd left some milk here the other day, but when I arrived here, I remembered that I took it back to the house with me and drank it last night. It was hot chocolate. Very nice. But now I suffer. So there's a mismatch between being a disciple of Christ and a mathetes, a disciple, a student of Christ, and being a mathetes, a follower, a student of the world, the cosmos. Okay, mismatch. They are in contrast to each other, and they fight each other. Now, the Lord talks about this, says, the world hates you. You might well say, well, when I go around the place, the world doesn't really hate me. We're treated very nicely here in Lincolnshire. Everybody looks after us carefully and nicely, and people pop in and they enjoy looking at the church and so on. But that's not really what it means. It's not really that sort of way, although it does end in persecution at some point. And at some point, the persecution does always come in every society, and always has done, and will come again. And in some parts of the world, it is particularly virulent at the moment. Thecla. It's a bit like the sort of hatred we're talking about. They're immiscible. Now, the word immiscible is used in science to describe two liquids that will not dissolve into each other. The most obvious ones are oil and water. If you pour oil on water, the water does not dissolve into the oil, and the oil does not dissolve into the water. They stay as two separate things. And even if you take the test tube and give it a good shake and leave it a little while, it'll turn white, but that is just an emulsion, and eventually those two liquids separate themselves out into oil on the top and water on the bottom. They are immiscible. There's some things are called aquaphilic, and that means they like water and they dissolve nicely into it. So something like alcohol will be aquaphilic, or you could say also the water likes the alcohol too. So each one dissolves the other one. Oil and alcohol dissolve into each other as well, which is quite interesting. And if you dissolve oil into alcohol and then put the alcohol into water, the water will go milky because the water does not like the oil. Okay? And it's that sort of way that we're talking about hatred. These are two totally different realms that we're talking about. The one is of Christ, the disciples of Christ. The other ones are the world, and the disciples are the world. And they don't basically mix. And it rather sort of describes and explains why it is that people of faith, people who are Christians, look at the world in one way, and people who are not, they can look at it in a completely different way. In our culture here in Britain, people, generally speaking, up until the 1960s, had a much more Christian way of looking at things, even if only culturally. And since the 1960s until now, that has become more and more distinct. So the last 60 years, the culture of being a Christian, the culture of being British, have been things that are drifting apart. It is, as it were, they're homogenized, so they're shaken together, but actually they're beginning to separate themselves out into two different groups as well. Okay? So we confess one way of looking and thinking about things, and they confess a different way of looking and thinking about things. Okay? And the Holy Spirit himself confers upon us that business about looking at things from a position of ano rather than kato. Okay? The Lord continues, remember the word I said to you. A slave, a servant it says here, but it's really doulos, a slave is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they'll also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. Okay? So the slave is not greater than the master. He said that to them back in chapter 13. You can look it up. Verse 13, chapter 13, verse 16. The slave and his master or her master are effectively the same person. Rather like if you own a company and you send one of your workers out to do something for you, that worker acts and behaves on your behalf and does deals on your behalf. That worker does not do anything on their own behalf. And if people like your company and like your products, they will buy from your agent. If they don't like your company, they don't like your products, and they think your designs are appalling, they won't buy from your agent any more than they will from you. And the Lord is saying the same thing about themselves. A slave is not greater, not going to be treated any differently. If they despise the Lord, they're going to despise the servant as well. If they love the Lord, they will love the servant also, because they're effectively the same person. So somebody who is a Christian carries the name of Christ upon them, and the person of Christ is carried in his name. And therefore, wherever that person goes, they take Christ with them. Okay? And therefore, if they get my word, they'll keep yours also. If they respond positively to Christ, they'll respond positively to the Christian. If they respond positively to the Christian, they're going to respond positively to Christ as well. This assumes, of course, that the person is a good Christian. And there are many cases where people meet me where I have this sort of deep inner feeling that I'm telling them of Christ, not because of Christ, but because of me. And that I perfectly understand. That is not the same thing at all. I cannot expect them to treat me with any regard. Okay, so those who are with the water will be with us water. Those who are oil will hate the water that we are and will persecute it. Why? They'll persecute it because they do not know him who sent the Lord. The oil cannot dissolve into the water. Now, what does the Lord really mean by this? Okay, he who hates my Father, hates me, hates my Father also. And that little paragraph up to there until the end of, they hated me without a cause, in verse 25. We'll come back onto this in a moment. But it's to do with, if you look at, it's to do with the Jews really at that time had begun to think about the law in an idolatrous way. So they followed the law completely. Nothing wrong with that. But they followed the law, but did not actually enter into the inner meaning of the law. And the inner meaning of that law was bringing them close to God, close to the heart of God, helping them to understand that really the law is about love. And go back to what the Lord said about the law and the prophets. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, and to love your neighbour as yourself. There's something else there. And your neighbour as yourself. So that was the meat and drink of the law and the prophets. And that was the bit that they had managed somehow or other to forget, to leave to one side. Shine, shine, O New Jerusalem, the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. Dance and be glad, O Zion. Good morning to Colchester. So good morning to Thekla, God bless you. Rather, very good morning to you, very early. Tatiana, and evolving Erind. No, we need to be apart from the ordinary. We need to be more than that. Well, the ordinary in some ways is actually what happens in heaven. What happens here is extraordinary because, of course, it is filled with evil. So good morning, John from Australia. Good evening to you. God bless you. Christ is risen, just as you go to bed. I was like thinking about that on Easter Day, that by the time I'm saying Christ is risen, people in Australia are waking up the next morning. Okay, so have that idea there, that they had committed idolatry by making the law into God, rather than using the law to come closer to God. Their adherents had become idolatrous, and therefore they did not know God the Father, they did not know Christ, and they wanted to persecute him rather than admit that they might be wrong. But, verse 22 and onwards, there's no excuse. Jesus has come. Jesus has spoken to them. He is the Word itself. He has done works of unprecedented nature. They have seen the works. They have seen Christ. And their reaction is that they hate both Jesus and God the Father, therefore. This willing refusal and the causeless hatred is the sin of which they convict themselves. So they convict themselves of sin by refusing to see that Christ is God, and the very one that the law and the prophets are actually leading them towards. And nothing's going to cover that up. It says in the Greek, actually, it will not. There's no cloak for their sin. There's nothing they can throw over their sin. There's no excuse for it. Nothing's going to cover it up. There's a quote there, verse 25, they hated me without a cause. That's from Psalm 68 in the Septuagint, 69 in the Hebrew text. So verses 4 and 5. And if you read the rest of that psalm, you'll see the prophecies of rejection by the Jews, and even they gave me gall to drink, and so on. So the rejection and crucifixion is prophesied within there. They hated me without a cause. There's, of course, King David talking about the hatred of him and his own family, with no cause at all, because he was doing the right thing. The Lord talks about it being in their law, okay, not in the law, their law. And by doing so, is distancing himself from the very thing that he said he came to fulfill. Okay? Again, to fulfill the law. Well, so he did. The Lord is the law and the prophets. But in that sense, he points directly towards God the Father. Whereas by saying in their law, he's saying the way they are using the law that the prophets gave them, Moses and the others, via Christ himself, of course, gave it to Moses, then what is happening there is that they have made it into an idolatrous God, an idol, rather than something that leads you directly towards Christ and towards God the Father. Okay, as Phoebe been saying here, easy for us to make text or tradition more important in our lives than God too. In many ways we are, or at least I am, no better than people in the time of Christ. Oh yes, absolutely, Phoebe. I'm not saying that I agree that describes you well. Whenever we read about the scribes and the Pharisees and the people antagonistic towards Christ, we need to put ourselves standing in those people's shoes. We are the Pharisees, we are the scribes, we are the people who are the doctors of the law, we are the high priests, we are the people who are more threatened by Christ because we will follow our tradition and to the detriment of Christ if we're not careful. We must constantly be looking through it and seeing Christ within it. And when we don't, we just see something ridiculous, then we reject it. There are quite a number of customs that have grown up within the Orthodox Church that point away from Christ rather than towards him. I'm not going to go into those at the moment, but the sort of things that some little village somewhere or other have developed. They go past some church and they spit 3 times before they carry on for good luck. Or I was told once that they need to have the child baptized and for the child to have communion because they wanted his legs to grow straight. They wouldn't be bandy when he was older. Well, that obviously is ridiculous tradition. Nothing whatever to do with Christianity. So I said to them, I won't baptize your child at the moment. I will talk to you about what baptism is about. And a week later, I discovered another church had baptized their child. Never mind. Verse 26, when the Helper comes, the Paraclete, that is, we talked about Paraclete before, the Comforter, the one that builds the fort next to you, the one who stands by your side like an advocate, like a lawyer, taking your side as well, strengthening you, whom I shall send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father, he will testify of me. Now, we can, if we want, think about this in terms of the Filioque clause, the addition to the creed that the Roman Catholics and West have, where they say proceeds from the Father and the Son, and we reject that, obviously, but this is not really what this is about, although it's one of the proof texts that we use. The point of this is that the Spirit of truth proceeds from God the Father. And in proceeding from God the Father, bears witness also to Christ, that he is also from the Father. That is the important part of that he is begotten of the Father, and that is the testimony that he bears. And the same thing is, because of that, you will also bear witness of Christ too, verse 27. Because the Holy Spirit will actually invade you as well, and his testimony about Christ, which they received at Pentecost, is something that enables the disciples to bear witness of Christ as well. And they will bear full witness of him because they have been with him from the very beginning. Okay? From the beginning of the story, beginning of John's Gospel, they have been with him. Not from the beginning of time, but from the beginning of his ministry. They'll bear witness to all that he has done. Okay? It's nice to see everybody. We've got, who else has turned up? Russ has turned up. Good morning. God bless you. Christ is risen. Okay, well, I think that's about it for today. I'd be grateful if you continue to pray for a particular person. His name is Marcus. Marcus had problems. Very nice young man actually, very nice indeed. And it appears that he took prescription drugs, medicine that was not prescribed for him. Somebody else said that he ought to try them because they do him good. And rather than doing him good, it actually killed him. So please pray for Marcus. I feel very sorry about him. Okay. Thank you, Dino. God bless you. Have a good day. Thekla has sent us a whole series. I can't see what those first things are. I must get myself to Specsavers because I can barely see a thing. And Brother Daniel was saying he's still driving. Certainly can't see a thing through here. Nothing at all. Christ is risen, Christina. Yes, God bless you. And yeah, please do pray for Marcus. He was a nice young man. He was a footballer, rather a good one, but he had an accident which damaged his leg, and after that he could only do those other things. Okay? Am I arrested? Well, you know what they say, a change is as good as a cardiac arrest. I had best part of 3 days in bed, but they weren't willing 3 days in bed. I was extremely annoyed because I had all sorts of things I wanted to do. But there we go. But anyway, enough of that. I'm fine now and ish, and hopefully back here, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, or as Christopher said to me yesterday, he said I can probably manage bright-eyed, but bushy-tailed, no. Okay, righto, God bless you. Christ is risen, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Your prayers.